my lady Irina. I noticed that you were uncomfortable, and I have not ignored you. I assure you that I've only kept silent toward you out of the hope that perhaps you would feel better if not noticed. But let me say that I find you devastatingly beautiful tonight, and I thank you for attending this dinner. I assure you that if you should come on this tour, you will come to no harm, and if you do not, I will allow you to leave. Irina looks to Azrael and she says, I shouldn't leave. I should stay with all of you.
But if it pains you too much, you should. There's no point in suffering any longer. I understand if it pains you to be here.
That
Will you
being,
hold my hand?
Sure.
She takes your hand and she waits for you to lead the way.
Cog kind of leans to Strahd and goes, I don't really understand the sentiment of holding hands behind between organics. Is that just a me thing, or does that count for you guys too? Referring to him vampirically speaking.
It has been some time since I was alive. I can't say that I remember much of it. Come
You don't
along.
remember much of your human life?
He begins walking and he says to you, Oh, I remember the highlights. It's not been erased from my mind. It's more that much of it has become meaningless after so many centuries. I remember particularly the great moments like my father, King Barov von Zarevich II, leading our armies. He was a great general and king, and it was at his side that I learned the arts of war and conquest. Things like that are the things that stay with you. The times when I learned to bring order to a land wrought with chaos and confusion. He continues walking with you following, and he leads you through. I'll actually depict on the map where you go. One sec. He leads you through these double doors into a large. Okay, that didn't work. Let's try it again. Through these double doors into a large hall.
Is it the same way where Hector went?
I think went down these stairs here.
No, yeah, Hector went down those stairs.
Oh, okay.
As Strahd walks down this hall, you note that it is rather large and choked with dust and stretches into darkness ahead. Webs hanging from the arched ceiling like drapes, and life-size statues of knights line the hallway on both sides. Their eyes seem to watch you. He ends at another double door, and this will take me a second to reveal. And he opens those doors, and you see before you a chapel. Dim-colored light filters through tall, broken, and boarded-up windows of stained glass, illuminating this ancient chapel of Ravenloft. A few bats flutter about near the top of the 90-foot-high domed ceiling. A balcony runs the length of the west wall, 50 feet above the floor. In the center of the balcony, you see two tall chairs. There are benches coated with centuries of dust lying about the floor in jumbled disarray here. Beyond the debris, lit by a shaft of light, stands an altar. And one minute. Strahd pauses here, and he says, This castle was built over 4 centuries ago. upon the ruins of a much older fortress which lay atop the pillar stone of Ravenloft when I found it. I put out the call from mages, architects, and engineers from every corner of my conquests. And from every corner they came. He looks on wistfully at the hallway that you just walked through. And then he turns and looks at the chapel. And he says, I recall the day that Prefect Cyril Romulich first dedicated this sacred hall to the glory of the Morning Lord. Each man and woman had such faith in the power of his consecration. Yet behold what it has become. He shakes his head and pauses for a moment. And then he says, and some of you have spoken of faith. But look what faith comes to. Ruin.
I think Hector will actually do a divine sense and see if there actually is any teeny bit of like consecrated power here.
You sense that Strahd is undead, but you don't sense much else.
All right.
Well, you know what they say, faith without works is dead, am I right?
Strahd looks at you and says, I've never found much use for faith of any kind in things or creatures. Far better to me to place my faith entirely in myself, and to master one's fate without reliance upon others is the best way, in my opinion. What do you say, Cog?
I wouldn't say that we're too far off the mark for the most part. For different reasons,
Yes, I thought
obviously.
you might agree.
A question, if you don't mind me asking. If you could
Yes.
get out of this bubble, so to speak, what would you sell to get out of it?
I will one day conquer the mists, and I will one day go beyond them. I will not sell anything. I will defeat what stands in my way, just as I always have.
Well,
He
What
turns
do you
and he
think
begins
stands in
walking.
your way?
He begins walking again, and he says, these are more sensitive matters, which I will not share with just anyone. I keep these as a confidence to myself, but I will tell you that there are dark powers which maintain things as they are, and which I contend with, though I will defeat them eventually.
I have a real quick question. Yeah. So I just first off, I gave up trying to use my headset, and I'm just going back on my phone, but I don't see any of the tokens on the map right now.
The map's pretty big, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's not showing
Yeah.
up good on the phone.
Oh, I found them. I thought there's. I was looking in the wrong
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're more like a general representation right now, since we're not like in turn order, so everybody I think is just kind of showing where they're close to where about they are.
I think it just left us at the front door.
Yeah,
of
it's,
someone's.
it's,
And I want to reassure
Yeah,
you,
yeah, I
are
was
very
thinking-
close to coming in.
all right. Because I was just I was thinking you guys were still in the dining area.
Yeah, no.
Then I just scrolled
They're
over
in
to
the
the left
chapel.
to the right a bit and found you guys.
However, Strahda's just begun leading you out of the chapel back through the hall. And he now turns off. Let me see if I can show you where.
No, real quick, I'm gonna put my character somewhere out of the map real quick so that I can easily bring her into the map when it's my time.
Absolutely. I actually have no idea where this room is. This is a very big castle. I'll need a moment.
I remember some YouTuber mentioning that he built the entire Ravenloft in Minecraft.
Impressive. Most impressive. Well, somehow you end up here. I'm gonna have to push you to a new map. One sec.
Somehow?
Yeah, I'll have to trace how he gets there. Like I said, it's a very big castle.
Okay.
So he gets you up here. I'm assuming he takes you via. Let's see. I can more quickly figure this out this way. Yeah. Okay, I'll actually really quickly show you where he went on the first map so you have a better idea. He took you from this side of the chapel through
And the
here.
character's at a balance point right there.
And then he took this stairway upstairs, leading you here, which is the corresponding stairway on the next level. And then into this room, which is the balcony above the chapel. So I'll actually show you the chapel as well, because you can see it from above. This is going to take another moment. So that would be the balcony above the chapel. And from here, through these double doors, and it's not working. From here through these double doors, he takes you to, one sec. A 20-foot high hall, which is dark. He actually grabs a torch along the way off of the wall, and he says, "This may be kinder for some of your eyes. Mine are adapted to the darkness, and I suspect Azrael is the same. But there is at least one of us here who is not." He looks at Hector.
And Hector looks at Nyx too.
Yeah.
Nyx is passed out.
Yeah.
Just on Cog's
Cog's
shoulder.
carrying her. A low moan.
I think Cog is
seems-
also doesn't have dark vision as well.
A low moan seems to travel the length of the corridor he's brought you to, and it rises and falls, intoning sadness and despair. It takes you a moment to realize it's only the wind. Before that, it seemed almost alive. And he pauses here, and he says, and he stands before a large tapestry. Hold on. It's hanging from an iron rod bolted to the wall. It's rather dusty. It's 10 foot square in size, and the tapestry depicts knights on horseback charging across a battlefield under a blood-red sky. The lead knight rides a black horse and wears a fur-lined black cloak, dark gray armor, and a visored helm shaped like a wolf's head. His sword glows with the light of the sun. Strahd looks it over and puts his hands behind his back, and he says, "Do you know who this tapestry depicts?"
I'm not very familiar. Oh, well, I guess Cog did read a bunch of books. I don't know if he would know or not.
I guess Camille attempt with a history check.
I don't think any of you have relevant information for this.
I guess Azrael, you did say like last session when if Esmeralda knows something, Azrael would know of it too for one check.
I don't think she would have discussed this with you. It's too far back.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
All right.
He goes on and
No.
says, "This tapestry depicts my father, King Barov. In it, he is leading his fearsome knights into glorious battle." He looks approvingly over the knights, and he says, "It is quite a powerful depiction, don't you think?"
It is rather splendiferous, I guess.
His eyes lock on that shining blade for a moment, and he, for a second, scowls.
I'm assuming you don't have that in your possession at the moment.
What?
The blade?
He shakes his head and he says, "It was broken long ago. That was the bright blade, a sword fashioned from the hilt of an elven moon blade, and a crystal blade imbued by Cyril Romulich with the radiance of the Morning Lord. It is just as well that it is gone. It has no place in my kingdom." His voice is kind of hollow when he says that.
Hard to let go of one's past, huh?
As I say, these are the moments that stay with you. My father was a great influence upon me. Perhaps I will show you more of that influence. He turns and he leads you ahead through... Let me see.
I think Hector will keep that in mind.
Just before they leave, or as the others start moving away, Melena's going to examine the blade more and commit it to memory,
Absolutely.
the way it's forged.
Alright, I'm going to quickly reveal this area. And this is where he takes you. One moment. He takes you into what appears to be an audience hall, dimly lit from the courtyard. There's broken glass and iron lattice work on a large window in the west wall. It's an immense room. It's a bit chilly, filled with brooding darkness, lit by the torch that Strahd carries. There are empty iron sconces dotting the walls, and he puts the torch in one of them. Hundreds of dust-laden cobwebs drape the hall, hiding the ceiling from view. Directly across from the window stand a set of double doors in the east wall that you've come through. Farther south, a single door also leads from the east wall. Staircases at both ends of the north wall lead down. At the far southern end of the hall is a large wooden throne that stands atop a marble dais. The high-backed throne faces south, away from most of the room, turned away from you and him. Strahd turns toward it and looks it over. And he pauses. At that moment, through the broken glass window, a cold wind shrieks, and arcs of lightning lance from the weeping skies beyond. It's raining quite fiercely outside, each bolt followed by the crack of nearby thunder. Strahd ignores this, and he says, "Can you guess the significance here?"
Well, I would imagine that is your throne.
Yes, at least it should be. When I was a child, Saint Andril anointed my father, King Barov, as the rightful heir to the crown of Old Zerovia. And when my father died, I inherited his crown, and with it the title of king. But I turned away from that title, and I resurrected my old title of Count. It would be an arrogance beyond folly to name myself king without a kingdom to rule.
I see.
I'm not one to pry into the psychology of my clients, but do you have any regrets?
I regret nothing. Every choice I have made was the correct one.
It sounds on par for the course.
What you see here was another correct choice. I turned the king's seat from me so that I would remember the lands that I have lost and that I must reclaim them. And yet few things are lost forever. He smiles wryly.
Well, to each of our endeavors. I'm gonna say Cog took one of the glasses of oil with him and just kind of like, just been sloshing it as he's been walking. But yeah, takes a shot of that.
Did you have many lands you owned beyond the mists?
My kingdom was far and wide. It encompassed what was once called Old Zerovia, the place of my father, and it was largely reclaimed by me after it was lost by the Zarevich family. However, when I came to this place, this newly conquered land of Barovia, I saw its majestic peaks, its beautiful countryside and vistas, and I knew I must relocate the center of our kingdom here. And so Ravenloft stands. A moment later, you hear the sound of chains clanking, and as you turn back to look, you see Rahadin coming toward the audience hall that you're now standing in. Strahd turns and puts his hands behind his back again. Rahadin enters, holding a chain in his right hand, its links connected to two steel collars which are clamped tightly around the necks of stumbling figures. One he drags forward. That figure features that figure's features are obscured by a sack that he wears over his head. His clothes are torn away and have been replaced by a threadbare, shapeless robe. The other figure has her clothes intact, and aside from the chain around her neck and the manacles holding her hands behind her back, she looks well treated. She is an elf, and you may go ahead and describe your character now, Endirian, if you like.
So I would say that her appearance would be probably like silverish skin with the gold eyes. Maybe like blondish brown hair.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, or is that good?
I would say that's about everything for her facial appearance.
Would anybody else like to describe themselves just very briefly?
Oh, go ahead.
Sure. You would see a man with and he doesn't really stand out on his own except for his ruby glasses, his scarlet scarf, and now matching with everyone a cloak hiding half of his body, his left side of his body, and holding the hand of a woman.
Yeah, the woman he's holding hands with, she's got very bright red hair. She is dressed fancily, as if showing up to an important evening appointment, in a blue dress. And otherwise, she looks. She has her shoulders low, and she looks a little nervous. She does look particularly concerned seeing you. And she keeps darting her eyes between you and Rahadin and Strahd, though you haven't learned his name yet. Anyone else?
Yeah, so Hector, he's a man in his mid-20s, but he definitely looks older just from dress from combat and stuff like that. He's got short, dirty blonde hair, pale skin. He's 5'11". He's very skinny though, and he is in a cloak and the gloves like the others are.
How about
And
Coggan?
he's oh,
What was the last part?
sorry.
What was your last part?
Oh, he's in I think I was saying he was skinny and he's 5'11" with pale skin, and he's dressed in some He's dressed in some studded leather armor, but he also has a healer's kit on his side and also a healer symbol on his shield.
How about Cog and Melano?
Cog is a large, warforged, rather bulky, with a kind of brass and steel-colored body. His head carries two kind of blinky, between like two rectangular slots. There's little blinky lights for eyes that kind of move around, and at the moment he's wearing the cloak more like a scarf because it would look rather silly for him to, a construct that doesn't wear clothes to wear a cape, so he kind of just wrapped it around his shoulders. And that's about it.
Melano.
In front of her, she sees a woman with wavy white hair, glowing, ethereal white eyes. She has a sort of grayish complexion. Her face. She is dressed similarly to the others, in that she has a cloak covering most of her body. And she is noticeably wearing gloves. Or rather, a glove. Over her right hand.
Wow, she's hard to miss. Okay, so Strahd turns to Rahadin and says, "Ah, Rahadin, punctual as always, I see. And you have acquired an extra criminal, have you?" Rahadin bows deeply and says, "The prisoner awaits your judgment, my lord, and yes, I was making my rounds around the castle when I happened upon this elf maid. At first I was surprised, given that none of my people, or none of the females of my people still live, as you know, my lord, by your own decree. But then I determined her to be of an outside species. And despite the fact that she is likely not a thief in that case, she is still trespassing. And so I brought her for judgment as well." Strahd thinks this over and he says, "How interesting. She must have been brought here by the mists. Since she is not of your group, am I right?" He looks at all of you.
Cog looks at Mel and I was like, "Do we have an elf on retainer?"
Mel shakes her head.
I've
There's
never
not
seen
a lot
her
of people
before.
to keep track of, you know.
"It's enough to make me believe that perhaps you are acting as a sort of a magnet or a lightning rod, attracting outsiders to be brought by the mist. That certainly would make you very much more interesting than you already were. And there was already so much to explore about you. Well, before we deal with the prisoner, we should deal with this woman. Since she is an outsider like yourselves, and since I have been unable to make good on my offer to give you the, what did you call him, Clockwork Man, I will give you the option of determining what will be done with our trespasser."
Company huddle.
Wow.
Okay, your puddles up.
Like they all just turn around. It's like,
I think Hector kind of sighs and then joins the huddle.
Mel does size as well.
Cog turns around.
Azrael sighs a bit louder than everyone else and joins.
while you're doing this, Strahd looks to. She hasn't given her name yet, but he looks to Tia. Is it Tia or Thea?
I think it's Thea, like Thea,
Thea.
Thia.
Yeah. He looks to Thea and he says, I take you to be a practitioner of the art. Well, I am studied in the art as well. Rahudin was right to bind your hands. But I warn you, try no